Alright, I wanted to do a quick video here because in Romans, I believe it's chapter 1, talks about how we can know of God through creation. And I wanted to use this example here of the human body. And we see here the main parts that I want to focus on is the brain and the heart. Now, this is key that we see this here, and we actually focus on this because with, the brain, the head, we can see is above the rest of the body. It's at the highest point, right? The heart is below it and generally in the middle with the rest of the organs, with the lungs and the liver and the stomach. That's in the general area there. And this tells us something here because there's a lot of people who want to follow their heart, but the Bible tells us that our heart is deceitfully wicked. There's a lot of people say that if it feels good, do it, right? There's a lot of people who would say things along the lines of follow your heart, right? And this is what gets us in trouble because the heart is deceptively wicked. And that is why the brain is put above the heart. This is not to mean that you are robotic, but you see a lot of people like to put feelings above facts. And that's why we have to have the head above the heart, right? See, the brain is where we think. It's where our logic is, our reasoning is, where we think about things and we decide whether or not we're going to accept it or reject it. But with the heart doesn't look at facts. It just goes by feeling. And that can lead you astray, right? Because a lot of times what ends up happening is you believe it because you want to believe it, not because there's actually evidence for it. An example is Donald Trump wrote a book called something about the deal, the art of the deal or something like that. And in it, he talks about how you have to make the deal sound great, way better than it is, because then people will believe it, not because it's true, but because they want it to be true, right? And that's basically the art of lying, is you have to tell somebody something that they actually want to be true. And when you are verifying what they want to be true is true, they'll believe it because they want to believe it, not because it's true and they've actually figured that out with their logic and in reasoning up here in the brain, but because they feel it, right? And this happens a lot of times, like with Donald Trump with the art of the deal. You make these deals with people that end up screwing them over, but they believed in it because they wanted to believe it. They were suckers. There's a sucker born every minute. A phrase that actually comes out of New York, right? From these snake oil salesmen. And you can see this with all kinds of things, such as the lottery, right? You believe you actually have a chance. And your chance is more likely to be hit by lightning and then attacked by a shark than actually to win the lottery. But you believe it because you want it to be true. The same thing when we're children. We're told that we could be president of the United States or we can be astronauts, right? And stuff like that. But it's not true. but we believe it because we want it to be true, such as the president, because, yeah, anybody can be president. No, you actually have to be related to uh, the English royal family, and you have to be a Freemason. There's actually a lot of requirements for you end up to being president, which doesn't apply to most Americans. And you actually have to be a Freemason to be an astronaut too, strangely enough. So that doesn't apply to all of us. You have to actually fit certain requirements. Like they tell the children, you can be anything you want to be. And we believe it because we want to believe it, but that's not true, right? You can't be the strongest man in the world because, for one, you have to have good genetics, then you have to have good support with diet and exercise and with people helping you out. And then you have to have the work ethic and the right mentality because there's other people who want to be the strongest man as well. And this would go for if you want to be the fastest man or woman, you can throw woman in there. You can't be anything you want to be, right? Like if you want to be the tallest man or tallest woman, so you can't be that because it's all depending on genetics. You want to be the most handsome or the most beautiful? Well, you can't be that because it also depends on genetics and it also applies to the eye of the beholder because to one woman you may be handsome, to another not so much. Same thing with women. You may not be attractive to, let's say, most men, but then there's a lot of men who think you're very beautiful, right? So it's all in the eye of the beholder on certain things like that. So you can't just be whatever you want to be. You may want to be a doctor, but you don't actually have the mental faculties to do so. And that's just how it is. You may want to be an athlete, star basketball player, football player, baseball player, something like that, right? But you just don't have any athleticism, right? But we believe these things because we want to believe it, like the American dream. We're all free. It's the land of the brave. That's not true. We're not free. We're all tax slaves. If we were free, we wouldn't have to get up and go to jobs and they tell us when we can go home and all this stuff. That's not freedom. And brave. What are you talking about brave? You don't dare to not have one of these jobs, right? Or stand up to the government. But we tell these things to ourselves because we want to believe it, right? This is what happens when you follow the heart, not the brain. You can have a heart and have feelings, and you use those feelings to help you figure things out, but you don't use it as your foundation. Such as if you're working out 2 plus 2 here, right? So you have 2 of these arrows on this side and 2 arrows on this side, and when you count them, you have 1, 2, 3, 4. You put 2 and 2 together, you get 4. You can do this, you put apples up here, you get 2 apples here, 2 apples over here, oranges, rocks, whatever you want to use. Every time you put 2 and 2 together, you get 4, right? But your heart, you feel like, no, 2 and 2 should be 6. Or whatever number, that's not 4, right? You come up with something. This feels right. That doesn't mean it is. Where you have a lot of these people today, it is becoming more blatantly insane, where the people are saying that I feel like I'm a cat or a dog, and I identify as a cat or dog and should be treated as such. And then they think that's reality. When it's like, no, uh, you're a man or a woman, part of mankind. You're not a dog or a cat. So yeah, but I feel that I am. So I got a question for you. If you truly feel like you're a cat or dog, what does it feel like to be a cat or a dog? You can answer the question, but you can't tell me because you have no idea what it feels like to be a cat or a dog because you're not one. It's the same thing with these people who are men, genetically men, who say they feel like a woman, or these women who are genetically women saying they feel like a man. No, you don't. You'd be saying, how can you say you know what I feel? Because you imagine that you feel like a man, or you imagine that you feel like a woman. Because unless you're a woman, you don't know what it's like to feel like a woman. Like, I do not know what it's like to feel like a woman. I can imagine what it's like to feel like a woman, but that may not be true, right? The same thing with a woman. If she says, oh, she feels like a man, she knows what it's like to feel like me. No, you may imagine that you know what it's like to be a man. You may have put some thought into it. You may have some empathy where you can relate to something a man's going through, just like a man can do so with a woman. But that doesn't make you actually know what it's really like to be the opposite, get alone to be like some other species, which is even more drastic, right? But you see, these people are putting the heart either on par with the brain or above. They're switching places, and they're letting their thinking be done with the heart, and then the brain, I guess, is pumping their blood. I don't know. Not doing anything, I suppose. Just basically being the mouthpiece for the heart, I guess. But yeah, everything's all jacked up there. They don't have things in the proper order and in proper alignment. And this is also done by trying to change how the relationship between the man and the woman is, as the brain represents the man. As we're told in the scriptures about how Christ is the head of the church, and the church is as the bride, the body, where the heart is, right? And then he says that the husband is the head of the woman, and that the woman should submit to her husband, right? This is basically the same thing how the body works. We have a head, and we need to put our own head, our own brain, as the husband, as the actual one in charge. And the heart and our feelings and our emotions need to be in subjection to our husband, the brain. We need to establish this authority in our own bodies. Because if not, we're going to be led astray. Because the heart is deceptively wicked. You see, the brain, it's connected to all the senses. It's able to bring in all the information and make something of it. The heart is not. The heart is not able to know and take up everything that the brain is. Yet it tries to make all the decisions. But that's not its job. Its job is to pump the blood, right? To regulate those kind of things. To make sure the oxygen is getting throughout the body. And that's an example of the church, how we're to spread the word throughout the body. Make sure the body is nourished, right? And we just do that. We don't put ourselves on par like the Catholic Church does, saying that they're in the place of Christ. No, you're not, right? Or they put themselves above the head completely. So there's a head on top of this head where the heart is now, some deformed body, right? So through God's creation, we can see how he has things set up. The brain up here on its lonesome here, right? No other organ here. You can try to say the nose, eyes, and ears, mouth organs. No, they're all direct connections to the brain for sensory input, right? So this is how things are meant to be, how they're created to be. And you need to look at this as the human body, because when you see, let's say, the country, the government making it where uh, men and women are equal, where the relationships, they don't have their proper role, then you have a deformity in the body. So the heart is kind of ripped out and it has this weird tumor place where it's right next to the head. So the body's now deformed. Or they swap places. So there's a defect in the body because the brain can't pump the blood, but the brain is trying to pump the blood and be the brain, and it switched places. and you have another deformity that's defecting the body, right? So you need to, when you look at these things and you're looking at how people are, like an example, a man trying to say he's a woman, you can see that there's a defect here. Spiritually, the spiritual body is deformed. Like physically, you don't see it, but spiritually, there's a defect here. And then there's some woman saying that she's really a cat. Okay, we have a defect here, a deformity in the body. It's not in proper working order. So I just wanted to make this video about the head over the heart. This doesn't mean you don't have a heart. It just means that you know there's an objective truth, such as 2 plus 2 is 4, no matter if you feel it's something else. Your feelings doesn't dictate whether 2 plus 2 is 4 or not, right? And I hope we can all agree to that. And if we can't, it just shows how defective people have become and how they are, metaphorically speaking, spiritually speaking, their body is deformed. It's not in its proper order. And it's not able to function correctly because they haven't put the heart in its place, and the heart is not in submission to the brain. That they don't go by actual objective truth, they go by what they feel. And then they got all kinds of problems because they think, oh, I go by what I feel, we all should go by what we feel. Okay, I'll show you how that's a big problem. I feel that I am always right and you're wrong if you don't agree with that. And now you have to submit to my feelings, because if you don't, you're offending me and you're hurting me and you need to stop. It's assault and you should be arrested. So you see that? You say, oh, your feelings, they should be respected and we all go by our feelings. But if I went by my feelings, you don't think you should go by them. So if you don't go by my feelings, I shouldn't go by your feelings. You see that? So, hope you think about these things. Thanks for watching. Take care. Oh, wrong button. Alright, here's the 3 verses that I like to put in all the videos here. Isaiah 34:16, seek ye out the book of the Lord and read, so that Jesus doesn't tell you what he tells the Sadducees here in Matthew 22:29, ye do err, not knowing the scriptures. It's not that you err in error because you don't know the one true church that happens to be your denomination, or that you don't know the fundamental beliefs, or the Nicene Creed, the Apostles' Creed, or whatever creed, or that you don't know the magisterium or the clergy, or you don't know your favorite pastor or priest. That's why you're in error. No, you're in error because you don't know the scriptures. You need the scriptures to test to see whether or not those are correct, whether those are the right traditions, whether those are legitimate clergy, whether that church is actually following God, and whether those creeds line up. Those fundamental beliefs are found in the scriptures. Because knowing the scriptures is knowing God. Like we read here in John 17:3, Jesus says, and this is life eternal, that they might know thee, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom thou hast sent. This is a deep knowing. As Adam knew Eve and she conceived, you need to know God in like manner, so that you may be born again, that his word, his seed, it abides in your heart. Will you truly believe that Jesus Christ is God in the flesh, that he died in your place and gives you his life in exchange, so that your righteousness, your good and your bad, your life, past, present, and future, died 2,000 years ago. Your life is his. He can do what he wants with it. He puts it to death, and he gives you his life in exchange, his perfect, eternal life. That's the deep knowing you need to know of God. So, there you go. Do you know him? Do you want to know him? Get to know him. Thanks again for watching. Take care.
So that fella couldn't join the church. He couldn't join the church He couldn't get baptized. He couldn't get baptized. He woke up with God. He woke up with the devil. Are you saved? So that fella didn't take the sacraments, didn't take the sacraments. Didn't say the rosary, didn't say the rosary. Didn't tithe, didn't tithe. He went to heaven, he went to hell. You saved? Didn't keep the law, he didn't keep the law. He broke the commandments, he broke the commandments. He didn't keep the golden rule, he didn't keep the golden rule. He woke up in glory, he woke up in the pit. Are you saved? You're saved. If you're not saved, you're over here or you're over here. You sure ain't in the middle. He said, Lord, remember me, thou comest thy kingdom. And Jesus turned to him and said, Verily I say unto thee, today shalt thou be saved. Just like that. You have been saved? If you ever saved, you were saved like that.